We've talking to you a little bit about what it's like to be a man in the field of social work.
That there is a shortage of males.
Why are you in this field? Why aren't you in whatever business or medicine or things like that?
Like, oh, well, you might not be able to care, you might not be able to help me through this because you're a guy.
We need to pay social workers more.
Like, I put those pressures on me just because, like, how I see myself in society,
Lauren, I have your questions right here, so I'll just read the first one. Are there any unique challenges you face as a man in social work? Being micromanaged. I think that because you're a man of color in this field, and we can experience that imposter syndrome, where do we belong? Is this really the work that we should be doing? That can be really actively reflected within the workspace by other people's unconscious prejudice that they hold, and wanting to check in and make sure that you're handling your business the way that you should. Working in foster care, oftentimes I found myself going to the courtroom. Sometimes I've been mistaken as a client or a client's family member. You can get mistaken for anybody but the professional. Also, you might find yourself working with an all-male caseload. And if you ever need to vent to, let's say, colleagues in the workspace, which often happens as social workers, it could be seen as a sign of weakness.
You could be counted out as a man. And so, in these different ways, you're kind of judged almost as like, oh, well, you might not be able to care, you might not be able to help me through this because you're a guy.
I've been very fortunate to not have experienced any prejudice while I was studying or while I've been working as a male in the social work profession. I think that while I was getting my bachelor's and my master's degree, that the professors had this understanding that there is a shortage of males, especially in South Texas and Hispanic and rural communities. So the support was always there. I think that a lot of the stigma comes from external factors, which are people who just don't understand what social workers do or what the profession is all about. So just whenever there are people who don't understand, I think it's important, especially as male social workers, to advocate.
The stigma I think that we face as guys is being in a helping profession, kind of like nursing or teacher ed or things like that, where it is mostly females because it's a relational field. And I think just because of our societal expectations of what masculinity is and what men are supposed to do is oftentimes we don't expect them to be in these relational fields. Why are you in this field? Why aren't you in whatever business or medicine or things like that? One of the challenges I think is when I would go, especially when I first started practice, I was a case manager, so I would go into a lot of people's homes. I worked with a lot of single women, single mothers, pregnant women. And so it was really hard. You have to really practice those interpersonal skills, show a lot of empathy. So, those psychosocial assessments and that, like I said, those communication skills are really, really critical, especially when you're a guy in social work.
I kind of put my own pressures on things, to feel like, because I was like a big guy, like I felt like I had to like handle all the problems, so I feel like I put those pressures on me just because like how I see myself in society, saying like how I view masculinity is like you got to be a problem solver. Yes, when I was an intern out in rural Oregon, there was this case that with DHS where this lady was getting her kids taken away. So they actually had me go just because I was big and, and everything. And if the dad came home, it would be a problem because on his file, it was like he was very volatile and stuff. So I was actually used just to kind of as like security, rather than somebody who was there to help. So a lot of times I put like unnecessary pressure on myself to like be a problem solver or to like not make mistakes. So like I don't feel like there's a lot of pressure on the outside, but like I put pressure on myself as a male to like do things exceptional and not have any mistakes.
One of the biggest challenges is the pressure to always be right. We're already assumed to be wrong as a person of color. Some quick examples would be things like questioning my credentials, asking another person after I provided them the answer. And so always having to be competent and be knowledgeable is a constant pressure.
All right, next question. What are your thoughts on pay in the field of social work? So social work constantly has this rap of being a job situation where you don't make any money. And in a lot of situations that can be true. And so we're often advocating and helping the people who have nothing or who are counted out or The people who, of course, can't pay for those things, they're on welfare, they're on some form of public assistance. And so often our service agencies are nonprofit agencies, and they have limits to what they can or can't pay. Now, a lot of social workers in the field, they will go to make their own business or to work in a private practice setting, and that can be really good. And you can make really good money doing that. At the moment, I'm working for the Department of Mental Health, and my benefits are excellent. My pay is really good. I'm really happy with the idea that I have a pension plan set up and investment accounts. Social work does not have to be a field where you make nothing. You can make a living wage. You can be happy. Entry-level positions in social work often are quite meager, but once you get that experience, once you find a niche, once you get really confident at the things you're doing and you specialize, the sky's the limit. It's up to you. And a lot of people have dual income. So I have my day job 40 hours a week, and then I have my business on the side. People write books, people do podcasts, people do all sorts of things to supplement their income.
I feel like the pay is changing. There are some good paying jobs out there, but as a whole, I feel like social workers are kind of getting hip to us being we're actual field of practice. A lot of people try to play us we have these soft skills, and our soft skills don't mean anything, but therapy and being able to connect with people and being able to connect with resources, those are important things in our community, and people are starting to wake up and starting to feel like we have master's degrees, we have doctors in social work, and we need to get paid what we're worth. So I feel like in a few years it's going to be different.
We're not as destitute oftentimes as I think people think that we are, but I think it's fair for us to fight to make similar pay to other helping professions, whether that's nursing or teacher ed, or psychology or things like that. And so while, I don't think we do it for the money, I think it's fair that we advocate for our profession to be compensated fairly. I don't think that that's asking too much. In addition to teaching, my family and I, every social worker's got a side hustle, but my kids are really into creativity and entrepreneurship. So a couple years ago, we started a t-shirt company specifically for social workers. And so if you want to get a hold of me on social media, you can just search for SoJustSix. That's SoJustSix. We would love your support. A portion of our proceeds go back into local nonprofits, so we're very social work oriented.
I do not think social workers get paid enough. I do not think NASW does enough. I do not think CSWE does enough. I do not think the state or federal regulations for our field does enough. And I know that there is limited funds in community organizations, but there is money out here. If we can pay our nurses $60K with an associate's degree, then we should be able to pay our social workers $60K with a master's degree and a license as well. I also think MSW programs should be more affordable, especially MSW programs as well as DSW programs if you choose to get an advanced practice doctorate. And I also think there should be more scholarship opportunities, especially for persons from underrepresented groups. I solely do not believe that you are wanting to increase your diversity initiatives if you aren't creating access, if you aren't creating financial access for students to attend your program.
There's a whole host of reasons why social workers need to be paid more. They need to stop disrespecting us. They being policy members, the powers that be that determine how finances are dispersed within an organization. You need to pay social workers of color more money. Oftentimes we're asked to go above and beyond, take on responsibilities and assignments that are not necessarily within the job description, but it comes with what we bring when we're doing this work. And oftentimes we're serving communities that look like us. Lauren, your next question reads, how did you deal with any stigmas you face? From my experience, I have an astounding support network with a partner, with family, with friends, being involved in therapy as well. And that's something I'll just bring home too, that it can be really important for therapists to also attend therapy, but also say documenting interactions is something that can be very helpful. Anything that you experience in the workplace that just seems like it wasn't right, or it might come back to you, it's important to document.
Really just supervision. I have an LCSW supervisor, and she helps with with all the kind of problems that I faced, because she faced the same problems, so that, and really just kind of talking about it on my podcast, talking about it with other social workers, just kind of building a community of people who experience things that I might go through.
I cope with these microaggressions and implicit bias by constantly validating myself, constantly engaging in positive self-talk, surrounding myself with people who support me.
You have to have people around you that can, whether that's your own therapist, whether that's a spouse, whether that's good friends, parents, you have to have a way to separate work life from your life. You're a social worker, but you're not a slave, right? You have to have those areas that boost your life, because work will very frequently drain you.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is actually part 2. I'm linking part 1 in the description box below and right on this screen so you can watch. The men will be discussing why they chose the field of social work and their best advice for men entering the field of social work. I will also leave all of their contact information, websites, podcasts down below, so be sure you follow. And until next time, I'm wishing you social work success.